I can't stop thinking about what you said to me last night. You see me in ways he never has. I don't think I want to keep pretending anymore. Those were my wife's words. Not to me. Never to me. My name is Derrick Samson. I'm a 38-year-old high school history teacher. I coach junior varsity basketball on Thursdays. I grade papers on Friday nights, and until 9 months ago, I believed that a man who showed up quietly and consistently, who kept the porch light on, who never missed a dinner, who always came home, was enough. I believed that love, if it was steady and real, could hold anything together. I was wrong. And the proof arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of a 47-second voice memo my wife accidentally sent to me instead of the man she'd been sending herself to, piece by piece, for over a year. I need to take you back to that morning because there are things you need to understand before I tell you what I did with what I heard. There are things about Freeda and me, about who we were before that memo, before the silence, before the version of our marriage that looked fine from the outside and felt like a slow leak from the inside, that you cannot understand without knowing where we started. Freeda and I met at a community fundraiser when we were 26. I was volunteering at the registration table, wearing a shirt I'd ironed 3 times because I was nervous for reasons I couldn't explain yet. She was running the entire event, moving through that room like she'd built it herself, which, honestly, she practically had. She'd organized the vendors, coordinated the live auction, designed the program flyers, and still had time to stop and actually listen to a shy history teacher stumbling over a compliment about her spreadsheet skills. That was Freeda. She made ordinary moments feel like they mattered. We married at 29. For 6 years it was good. Not a fairy tale. Better than that. It was real. We disagreed about money and in-laws and whether the thermostat should sit at 68 or 72. We had a daughter, Naya, who came into the world looking directly at me with these enormous dark eyes, like she was already cataloging everything. Those were the years I thought would be the blueprint for every year that followed. Then Freeda got promoted to senior brand director at Halcyon Media Group. The hours changed first, then the trips, then the conversations, not gone, but shorter, shallower, like someone had slowly been turning a dial down on the frequency we used to share. I told myself it was the season. I kept cooking dinner for 2. I kept leaving the porch light on. I had no idea the light was the only language I was still speaking, and that she had long since stopped being able to hear it. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe. The memo arrived at 7:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. Freeda had already left for work, earlier than usual, which I'd stopped questioning months ago. I was eating cereal alone, the way I ate most mornings now, when my phone buzzed on the counter. Voice memo. From Freeda. I almost ignored it. I assumed it was a grocery list, or a reminder about my mother's birthday dinner that weekend. We communicated in logistics now. That was what we'd become. I plugged in my earbuds. The first 7 seconds were silence. Then I heard her laugh, warm, unguarded, the laugh she used to use with me, and then the words that rewired everything I thought I knew. I can't stop thinking about what you said to me last night. You see me in ways he never has. I don't think I want to keep pretending anymore. 47 seconds. Then silence. I sat there until the cereal went soft. I pressed replay. Then I opened our shared tablet and scrolled to her contacts. Her boss was saved as ROC or Halcyon, professional, proper, but there was another contact, no last name, no photo, added 14 months ago, just Theo. I didn't call her. I drove to Halcyon Media with a lunch bag in my hand, telling myself it was normal. We used to do this years ago, show up, surprise each other. The receptionist, Priya, smiled wide when she saw me. Mr. Samson, Freeda just stepped into a meeting. You can wait upstairs. I rode the elevator up. The doors opened onto a glass-walled conference room, and I saw her. She was standing close to a tall man in a gray suit. Not touching. Nothing you could point to. But there's a closeness that exists between people who've crossed a line, a specific awareness of each other in every small movement, and I had spent 12 years studying human behavior in history classrooms, and I recognized it immediately. She laughed again, that laugh. I stepped back into the elevator before the doors fully opened. I drove home. I sat in the parking lot of our house for 20 minutes. I never went inside. I still had the lunch bag in my hand. I threw it in the outside bin. I never told her I came. That evening, I sat in the garage in the dark, not crying. Something worse, completely still, dismantling every memory of the last 14 months and holding each piece up to the light, looking for what I'd missed. There was plenty. The new perfume she wore on days she claimed to work from home, the way she angled her phone screen away at dinner, the business trip to Nashville she'd mentioned 3 days before she left, when she used to plan those trips with me weeks in advance. I'd noticed all of it. I'd chosen different explanations every time. The garage door opened. Nia stood in the frame, 11 years old in her oversized hoodie, looking at me the way she always looked at me, like she was reading something written just beneath my skin. "Did you and Mom fight?" "No, baby." "Is it worse than a fight?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She walked over and sat on the step stool beside me without being asked. Then she reached into her hoodie pocket, pulled out her phone, and said quietly, "Dad, I heard Mom on the phone last week telling someone she was sorry. I wrote it down. I didn't know what to do with it." She set the phone between us and went back inside. Freeda came home at 7:30 with groceries. She made jerk chicken, rice and peas, fried plantains, the ones she only made on special occasions or when something was sitting heavy on her chest. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen watching her cook. She was humming. Freeda hadn't hummed in this house in over a year. "I figured we could use a real dinner," she said, without turning around. "What's the occasion?" I kept my voice even. A pause. Half a second too long. No occasion. Just felt like it. We ate as a family. She asked Nia about school. She asked me about my students. She refilled my water glass without being asked, the way she used to do automatically, back when we still moved around each other with that married ease, that unconscious fluency of two people who know each other's rhythms. Under the table, my hand was balled into a fist on my knee the entire meal. Nia watched both of us the whole time. She didn't eat much. After dinner, she excused herself early, and I caught her pausing at the bottom of the stairs, looking back at us, before she went up. The next morning, I drove to my brother Calvin's apartment while Freeda took Nia to school. Calvin is 44, twice divorced, and built from the wreckage of enough broken things to recognize the smell of one burning. I played him the memo without context. Just pressed play and watched his face. When it ended, he was quiet for a long moment. Arms folded, jaw set. Then, "How long have you known?" Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "Maybe it's nothing." Just, "How long have you known?" Like my innocence wasn't even a question worth entertaining. "Known what exactly?" I asked. He looked at me with something that sat between pity and fury. "That she stopped choosing you." I didn't have an answer for that. Then he said, "There's something else. Sit down." He pulled out his own phone. He had a screenshot from 4 months ago. A rooftop fundraiser. Freeda and a tall man in a gray suit, standing the way two people stand when they've already said too much to each other in private. Calvin had taken the photo instinctively and spent 4 months telling himself it wasn't enough to act on. He knew now he'd been wrong to wait. I waited until Nia was upstairs that evening. No yelling, no pacing. I set my phone on the kitchen counter, looked at Freeda across the island, and pressed play. Her own voice filled the kitchen. She froze at the first word. When the 47 seconds ended, she gripped the counter edge, her jaw tightened, and then, slowly, her shoulders dropped. Not in defeat, in something that looked almost like relief, like she'd been carrying a door on her back for over a year and someone had finally lifted it off. "I didn't mean to send that to you," she said. I waited. "But I think part of me needed you to hear it." The room went quiet in a way that had weight to it. "Is it physical?" I asked. She looked directly at me. "No, it was never physical." I nodded slowly. "Then why does my chest feel like it stopped working?" She didn't answer that. She couldn't. Because she understood, the same way I was beginning to understand, that the absence of a physical line doesn't make the crossing of every other line any less devastating. It just makes it harder to explain to people who ask. It was never physical, she said, but it was real, and I won't stand here and pretend otherwise. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Not dramatically. My legs just stopped cooperating. I sat on the cold tile like a man whose foundation had shifted 6 inches sideways without warning. Did you love him? She closed her eyes. I don't think that's the right question. It's the only one I have right now. Long pause. I think I loved the version of myself I was when I talked to him. I turned that sentence over in my mind. I'm a history teacher. I know how to sit with something complicated, but that sentence didn't feel like history. It felt like a diagnosis, like she just told me, calmly and precisely, that our marriage had been a slow disappearing act and she'd been the one disappearing. I wanted to be angry. I was angry, but underneath the anger was something worse, recognition, because I could trace the timeline. I knew exactly when the distance started. I'd just chosen every softer explanation available rather than face the real one. From upstairs, Nia's voice. Mom? Dad? Neither of us moved. Nia came downstairs fully dressed, backpack on, journal in hand, the same burgundy journal she'd carried since she was 8. She set it open on the kitchen island between us. Didn't say much, just, I've been writing things down for 6 months. I need you both to read page 47. Then she went back upstairs. Freeda and I stood on opposite sides of the island and looked down at the page together. One entry, dated 5 months ago. Title in Nia's careful print, Things I Know for Sure About My Family. The first line stopped me completely. Dad still turns the porch light on every night even when Mom isn't coming home until late. He thinks she doesn't notice. She does. I've seen her look at it from the car before she comes inside. I couldn't speak, because I'd never told anyone about the porch light. I hadn't done it to be seen. I'd done it because it was the one thing I could control. One small, consistent act of love in a marriage that had been slowly slipping out of my hands. Freda's hand moved across the island. She didn't quite touch mine, but almost. We agreed quietly after Nia fell asleep. I would stay at Calvin's for 2 weeks. Not a separation. A pause. Room to breathe before we decided what we were building back or walking away from. First night at Calvin's, I lay on the guest bed staring at a ceiling I didn't recognize. At 8:47 p.m., the exact time I always turned it on, I opened the smart home app and switched on the porch light at the house. I didn't tell her. At 9:03, she texted, "The light is on." I stared at it for a long time. She sent one more. "I see it." I didn't respond, but I didn't turn it off either. That same night, Theo called her. I didn't know that until she told me weeks later. What I know is that she didn't answer. She let it ring out, set the phone face down on the nightstand, and looked out the window toward the front of the house, toward the light. That was the first night in 14 months she fell asleep before midnight. 3 weeks in, Freeda called and asked for one therapy session, just one. I said yes. Dr. Adaze Briggs was unhurried in the way that only truly confident people are. She let us both speak without steering. She took no notes for the first 20 minutes, just listened, hands folded, like she was measuring the temperature of the room. Then she set her notepad down. I want each of you to sit with one question. Don't answer out loud, just hold it. She looked between us. When did you last ask your partner what they needed? Not what would make them happy, but what they genuinely needed? And when did you last answer that question honestly for yourself? 60 seconds of silence. I counted. Then I spoke first. I stopped asking, I said, because I was terrified the answer was going to be not you. Freeda turned and looked at me, and her eyes filled. Not from pain, or not only from pain, but because in 12 years of marriage, in the middle of everything we'd broken and everything we were trying to hold, that was the first time I had ever said exactly the right thing. 6 months later, I moved back home. We weren't the same. We weren't supposed to be. You don't rebuild something and expect it to look identical to what burned. You build it better, or you admit you can't. We were choosing better, one careful day at a time. On a Saturday afternoon, Frida was reorganizing the garage when she found a receipt folded inside my old toolbox. Hardware store. Dated 3 years ago. 2 days after she'd mentioned, once and casually, that the front step had a crack in it. I'd bought the materials that same week. I'd just never gotten around to it. She walked to the front of the house. The step was freshly repaired. I'd done it quietly last month while she was at work. She stood on it, called my name. When I came out, she pointed down and just looked at me. I shrugged. "Told you I'd get to it." She laughed, that warm, unguarded laugh, the one I hadn't heard aimed at me in years. Only now it was, fully, completely, only at me. Behind us, the front door opened. Nia stood in the frame, journal open, writing something. She looked up, saw our faces, and smiled. She wrote one last line, and before she closed the journal, I caught it. Page 112. We're still here.